Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's video. It's Mark here from Digital Groove Online. This week I had a few emails on the website, and one in particular that stood out to me was to try something a little bit more in the Toolroom style. I know I've focused a little bit more on the melodic house side of things in recent videos, so I thought why not try? So it got me thinking, digging through the house archives, what sort of track would sound really, really good with a more modern twist in this Toolroom style that I'm going to go for. So I had to dig through the archives and I've picked out a really, really good track. Some of you may know it and some of you may not. And it's called Eddie Amador House Music. If you haven't heard it, I'm going to let you hear a sample of it now. And what we're going to do is I'm going to break down the track that I've made and show you the elements that I've put into it. I'm going to show you how we went from this.
Not everyone understands house music. It's a spiritual thing, a body thing, a soul thing, a soul thing. Not everyone understands house music. It's a spiritual thing, a body thing.
To this.
Everyone understands. It's a spiritual thing. A body thing. A soul thing.
So there you have it. It is my interpretation in a Toolroom style record of the famous Eddie Amador house music. And do you know what? I've made it in its most simplest form. I haven't really went too much. I haven't went into sound design at all. I've used a lot of samples the whole way through here. I've had some MIDI in there, and I've taken samples from the original record as well and turned it into something that I could play on my DJ sets. Just before I continue, all the project files that I create on YouTube are available in my Patreon, and you can check that out in the description below. But as there is original sampled material in this, I can't give that away, but you have all the other stuff to work with, the samples, the MIDI and everything else. Now, if you wanted to take this project and import in the original stems, you can do so. And there is a video on my channel called How to Remix Any Track, and it'll show you how to get those stems and vocals isolated and bring that into this session. So without further ado, we're going to jump straight in and we're going to go through every single track from top to bottom. There's not an awful lot going on, but it's really, really powerful, and it will send a club system into overdrive, and I think it would be a real toe tapper in the clubs. So the first thing was to jump into Splice and find a really, really decent kick drum. So let's have a listen to the kick drum isolated on its own. It is a Toolroom one shot that I've got off Splice. There is no EQ with that. It's just being triggered as it is inside the simpler. There is a little drum bus going on there with 10% drive, and we've just mixed the dry and the wet signal there with 37%. Okay, with house music, I like to stick to the classic 909 crashes. So if you just select that on its own, and I've just dropped that in as a one shot the whole way across there. Just noticed, I think I may have a little fade on that. Bring that back. And I'm just going to drop that in right to the start so that whenever we hear it again, it doesn't have that little fade in there at the start. There we go. So it's pretty dry. I don't think there's any effect on it at all whatsoever, and there isn't. So really dry, classic 909 crash. The next thing I'm moving down onto is a little hat groove. It doesn't play, your typical offbeat hat or running groove as such. It's just on every third beat, I think, or just on the off of every third beat. It's like a hat and a snare together. And all I've done there is a little bit of EQ along the bottom and emphasized the little snare area within the EQ itself. And I've fed it over here, as you can see, into a reverb return. If I just tab across to the mixer setting here, we can see that I have, it's very, very dry. And I've just fed it over into this reverb here. And I've dropped an EQ after it to cut some of the lows and some of the highs. Okay, the next sound down after that is the ride. And again, this sample was taken off Splice. I get most of my samples between Splice and a Loop Cloud, and I also bought a really, really good pack recently if you are into house music. Find it here. It's called Cyclopedia 2. It's expensive enough. I think it was like £180, but there's a real big library of sounds in there, and it's basically like Splice on its own, only for the genre that you're into. It's very, very house music focused, and across all genres as well of house music. So yeah, this one was from Splice, and it's just straightforward offbeat ride cymbal. And it's not being fed into any reverbs either. The next sound down is, and once we get to the bottom of the percussion, I'm going to play that together with the kick and the crash as well, just to let you hear how all that sounds on its own. So the next one down is a percussion loop. And I've just cut off the very, very lows there, and a little bit of a boost around here, just to bring out that little knock sound that you can hear. And it's then been fed into a compressor and a little bit of dynamic EQ, which just knocks the high end down, because there's a lot of ride cymbals in there. And as we get further down here, there's a full loop that has a lot of percussion and a lot of hi-hats in it and stuff, so I just wanted to duck that out of the way a wee bit more for it. But again, it's not being fed in anywhere. It's quite dry. It's just got the EQ on it and a bit of compression and a bit of EQ. So let's just solo some of the channels above to let you hear so far what that would sound like. And we're still not really down into some of the more aggressive sounds, like the full percussion loops. There's a little bit of a lead intro there. And I do have a bass loop in here as well, which I've taken off Splice. So that's the next thing we're going to listen to. It's a quite techno sounding loop. I think I got it from a Toolroom pack actually on the Splice site. And all I've done really there is really roll off some of those highs and get it down into the lower frequency, so it's just more of a sub sound that you can feel on the dance floor, with a little bit of harmonics added to it so you can hear it as well. And then I've added a saturator after that and just mixed the dry wet to 48%. So this is what it sounds like, and then I'll take the EQ and the saturator off just to let you hear what those two are actually doing. I'm going to group them together now by selecting the two of them and hitting Control and G. And that allows us just to turn this off and on, and then you can hear the difference between what those little bits of processing is doing by rolling off the top end and adding the saturator. So the bass loop is this here. And then we're going to take that off. There's a bit more aggression whenever we roll off those top ends and add the saturator to it. Sometimes I like to use an auto filter and just roll it off and change the algorithm of that and then pop some drive through the filter, and you can get a similar effect with that as well. So this, how that sounds then with the percussion loop, the ride, the hat, the crash, and the kick then on its own. You can hear we're starting to get that little bit of a Toolroom vibe going with it now. There's no bass changes that go on with the bass track the whole way through. It stays in the same key the whole way through, and we're just adding energy with that percussion, the vocals, the builds and the drops, and that's where the tension and release comes from, and the piano loop as well. So the next sound down is a lead sound. It's just the lead sample again off Splice. I think I did edit this slightly to put it into a rhythm and then consolidate it afterwards. Wondering, is it out here somewhere? No. Different loops. Okay. So this is what it sounds like. And if I just take the EQ off, that would just poke through the mix too much for me and distract yourself away from the overall feel of the track. That would be poking out too much for me. So I've rolled it off and just had it quite subtle underneath. So if we hear that with the bass. You can still hear that underneath there, giving that a bit of a groove. But if we were to take off the EQ, it would just be a little bit too much for me. The next one down is a full loop, and that full loop came from the Toolroom sample pack as well on Splice. And what I've done on this here, I've just kept it as it is, and it's at its full transient. So I should have added in one of the percussion loops above. Here, I think it's this one. Yeah, I've put it into, so it's in beats mode and the transient mode is in forward, and then I'm starting to pull it back here. So you've got 100, let me just play this for you now to show you what this sounds like full. And the more I pull this back, the decay of each sound starts to tighten up and become a little bit more plucky or stabby. Forgot to mention that when I was in doing that one. So as I go down to this loop here, I haven't really done anything with that apart from a little bit of processing on the channel. I've kept it all the same. I haven't done that little transient trick there. But the EQ on it has been heavily shaved, a little bit of mids taken out, some of the highs rolled off, and a little bit of a boost above here. Some glue compression, and then the fab filter is just doing a little bit of filtering towards the end. Whenever it's just about to drop, it sort of drops down and filters and then comes back in again. So realistically, this is what's affecting the sound throughout the track. So I'm going to highlight those two and group them together and show you a before and after. So this is with the effects on. Just shave some of the low end aggression off, and I want it to sort of sit in the background, but the hi-hat to poke through, but not too much. When I take this off, the hi-hat becomes really loud again. And what that sounds like then with the lead, the bass, the percussion, the ride, the hat, the crash, and then the kick as well. And that sounds like this. You can hear how much that loop really adds value to it. Okay, so if I hadn't have had the lows sort of taken out there, and didn't have the glue compressor, just taming the highs there and sort of bringing them closer together, it may have stuck out too much. So I've done that for that reason, just to make it blend in with the rest of the percussion. The next one down is just a hi-hat that I've found. I've actually sampled this, believe it or not. This came from a David Penn track, and I've been able to isolate the hi-hat in that track by using something like fader to separate those stems, and taking a little hi-hat sample out and bringing it in here. And I've just added a little bit of erosion after that, just to give it a bit more grit. So if I turn the erosion off, it just becomes a wee bit softer. And again, it's not fed to any reverb or anything like that. I don't have any other processing on that. It is just, there's a little bit of the frequency rolled off there at the bottom. You can see where the mouse is hovering at the minute. I've just rolled some of the low end off within the sampler itself. So let's play it with everything as I normally do. Just go up the whole list and we'll play it together, and we'll show you adding each element and what it does to the track. Even just dropping that hi-hat out, you can tell that it takes the energy a little bit away. So I'm going to add it back in again. Okay, now there is a little bit of claps going on inside the samples as well, but I wanted to add my own on top of it, and that was this one here. It is being fed into the reverb, similar to the one at the top here, which was the sort of snare clap hat thing. And I've just taken the sample. There's no filtering going on here inside the sampler itself. It's just being fed into the reverb. So let's have a listen. So realistically, that's a foundations of starting off a really, really nice track if you wanted to get your hands on those samples in that project file itself and play around with it. So the next thing after that is going and diving into the original audio. So I've ripped these stems from Fader, like I have in past videos. I really like the Fader software. Unfortunately, Ableton doesn't have its own stem splitter. As someone pointed out a few weeks ago, the FL Studio now has it, and it might become available one day, but it currently isn't. So my favorite my favorite software to extract stems from original tracks is currently Fader. So let's have a listen to that. I'm going to solo that, and I've just taken certain parts of it and looped it up, and this is the piano looping over and over, I believe. And what have I done with that? So when we look at the chain, I've sort of processed it heavily because it's a really old house track. It didn't really sound too well on its own, so I had to do a lot of heavy EQ. I really pushed it through OTT as well, just to really bring the lower levels up and the higher levels down and just make it sound more full. I've also ducked it in and out with a little bit of the LFO tool, just to give it a bit of a pump and a bit of a vibe. And I've added track spacer here at the end. I'm obviously ducking it out of the way of something. Yes, the vocals. So when the vocal plays, it's ducking the piano out of the way there, as we can see there at the bottom. And a little bit of dynamic EQ. So I just click that again. And if you don't know what dynamic EQ is, it basically homes in at a certain frequency. And when that frequency plays, depending on what settings that you've put in, it will duck that out of the way. It's a little bit like a side chain, only for a particular frequency, and it'll duck it depending on how hard you want it to do it. And that SSL one there in particular comes with the Slate Digital bundle that I have, and it's quite useful. But you can do it inside Ableton as well. Let's have a listen to the piano then on its own. What I'll actually do is I'm going to highlight everything, and we'll group it as well, and we'll do it before and after on that. So this is the after, once the processing was done and how I got it to sit in the mix. So you can hear there's lots of bass there. It sounds a lot cleaner there because the rest of the audio has a lot of bass, a lot of groove. And these are the frequencies that really cut through in the mix. There is no real need for the other ones. And you can hear that still cutting through nicely. Okay, and then the next one down is the vocals. I haven't used all vocal phrases from the original. I've just taken little snippets of it and dropped it across where I thought it sounded appropriate. And let's just see the one down below. That's a little scratch sample that I've taken out of it where it scratches with the vocal as well. And on those vocals we have added some multi-band compression. There's a virtual mix rack on that, but I was turned off. I was going to say I wasn't thinking it was doing anything. On EQ, and the de-esser just stops it from pronouncing the P's and the S's too violently over the mix. Color box is in there. I'm not using that. I can take that out. I can take the virtual mix out as well. And I've just rolled off a lot of the lows. And just give them a little boost in the areas which I thought give it a bit more presence in the mix. So let's have a listen to the vocal.
Spiritual thing.
You still hear some effects in the background from the stem splitter.
A body thing.
But it still works. It works along with the rest. And when we bring the piano in, you'll be able to hear that it just sits smooth and enough in with it as well. So and we fed that to a shorter reverb there, I think. Let me just go over here. Yeah, that Vox verb there. So just fed it into there using this middle one here that says -8. So that's the scratch sample there I was referring to. So let me just see. It must have been an overlap and I just had to put one below it. And it does look like an overlap. So let's just play the two of those together.
Spiritual thing.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just add the piano in with that too, just to let you hear that. Even though it's a little bit chopped roughly, and there is other little sounds coming through in the vocal, it doesn't really matter when the pianos and that's are playing. If it was on its own, you would notice more.
Spiritual thing. A body thing.
And the more you add in, it sounds even better.
A soul thing. Understand.
So there we go. As I say, I've picked a more jamming section within the track to build this out. I haven't actually arranged it out yet, but I thought I would get to work and just go through some sort of sounds that we could put onto the video today to show you sort of Toolroom style record. And the last thing there is just sort of a long snare build up. There is just a little bit of glue compression on it and just reverb directly put onto the channel. It's quite short with a small amount of the wet signal being applied to it. It's not actually being sent over to any return channel. So let's have a listen to that on its own. And that gives you that tension just before the release whenever it drops back in. And obviously there's a few other things we could do with effects and risers and a few other tricks. I would like to get it finished. There would be a bit more work going into it, of course. But for now, it was just for it was just for this the purpose of this video today. So I'm going to play it through one more time just to let you hear it all on its own. And that is all the channels that I've put in that. It sounds pretty full, it sounds pretty rocking. So I'm really looking forward to arranging this out and giving it to someone to test in the clubs. Let me know what you think in the comments if you liked it and if you'd like to see me do more of these videos. And don't forget you can drop me messages on the website digitalgrooveonline.com as well. That's how this one came through. So I really enjoyed this here. If you want to see other styles and other tracks or something made in a particular style, do drop us a comment and let us know, because even if it's something I haven't done before, I have covered most genres with the clients that I teach, but if it's something I haven't done before, I'm always up for the challenge, so definitely drop it in and let me know.
Everyone understands. It's a spiritual thing. A body thing. A soul thing.
So there you go, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. I really had fun making that myself. And as I said, these project files will be on the Patreon very, very shortly. The original samples can't be included for copyright reasons, but they are very easy to take out of the original track to put it in if you wanted to have a go at even remixing this in that style yourself, or if you want to just take those samples, create a tech house track in your own style, you can do so as well. So until next week, thanks very much for watching. See you again.